Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities, and I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on gold exploration today. We will hear from Mike Thompson, President and CEO of Kesselrun Resources Limited. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook, and then we will take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss some fine print. During this Kesselrun webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined on page 2 of the Kesselrun corporate presentation, and that can be found on the company's website, Kesselrunresources.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures pertaining to Kesselrun. So we have Kesselrun Resources presenting today. The company is focused on gold exploration in northwestern Ontario. Their flagship is the Huronian project, which has a long history going back to its start as Northwest Ontario's first gold mine. The company has had success drilling there with some zones that remain open for expansion. As well, the company has targeted some geological structures to the southwest of Gold Shore Resources' Moss Lake deposit, and they also have the Bluff Point project over close to New Gold's Rainy River mine. So with that, I now turn it over to Mike to update our audience on the company.
So yes, Kesselrun Resources advancing the high-grade Huronian gold project in an emerging gold district. And there's our forward-looking statements. Again, it's on the website as well, so if you want to have a peruse and read the sort of disclaimers talking about historic resources and other things, production and resources that we sort of reference in the presentation, among other things. An underexplored top-tier jurisdiction in Canada. You know, Northwestern Ontario is a great jurisdiction. So that both of our projects are there. Bluff Point is our sort of secondary project, as mentioned near the Rainy River gold mine. I can touch on that at the end of the presentation if we have time. But we're going to concentrate on the Huronian project. It's where we've been focusing most of our efforts the last number of years. Has a past producer, Northwestern Ontario's first producing gold mine, and also has an historic resource. So here is Northwestern Ontario. So for your reference, you can see up at the top, there's the Red Lake mining camp, Evolution Mining, and Great Bear project that Kinross has now just taken over the last couple of years. And then the Rainy River project down in the bottom corner in the southwest, and various other multi-million ounce development and advanced exploration project. Many, notably the Goliath complex that Next Gold's advancing, Hammond Reef, Agnico Eagle, etc. The one we sort of keep our eye on is the Moss Gold Project, our next door neighbor at Huronian, which I'll elaborate a lot more on. So the area has fantastic infrastructure, Trans-Canada Highway, electrical transmission lines. The Hydro One grid is being upgraded specifically to support future mine development. So it's something to note. And Thunder Bay, a major port, about an hour to the east of the Huronian project. I'm based in Thunder Bay, so it's a great community, mining supportive, lots of infrastructure and support for development. So here's a bit of a zoom in of the Huronian Gold Project area. It's called the Shabandawan Belt. So notable projects in the area you might have seen in the news, other than obviously Kesselrun's project, but you've probably seen Gold Shore Resources Moss Lake project, which is our next door neighbor, Delta, which is out farther in the east of the project area, or the belt. But and it's, as I mentioned, we're about 100 kilometers west of Thunder Bay, proximal to infrastructure. The Trans-Canada Highway, rail lines right there, power transmission line. You drive underneath the transmission line on the way to the project after you turn off the Trans-Canada. We feel this is the west end of the belt where we're located is the most prolific part of the gold belt. It hosts all the historic production, which is on the Huronian project, and all the compliant resources on the Moss project of Gold Shore Resources. So zoomed in a bit more, we'll talk about the Huronian project. It's 100% owned. Both of our projects are 100% owned, unencumbered, 4,600 hectares approximately. So it's a good sized land package. Has that historic production. Produced about 30,000 ounces of gold and 170,000 ounces of silver in the 1930s, but also hosts an historic resource that was done in 1998. 45,000 ounces in indicated, 500,000 in inferred, at 14-15 grams per ton. So refer everybody to that disclaimer, but I must stress this is an historic resource. We're not treating it as a compliant resource. We're just treating it as an exploration indicator, essentially. That's my regulatory speech. So the project hosts multiple high-grade and bulk tonnage targets, and as mentioned, on strike from the Moss deposit. You can see in the center, this is the proposed pit from the old PEA of the Moss deposit. You can see the geology runs onto the south of our project area. So as mentioned, the Moss deposit is a lower grade deposit. It's got about 1.2 million ounces in indicated and just shy of 5 million ounces in inferred, just over a gram. So good solid grades. I always sort of a metric in my head is over a gram. You've got some good solid economics usually for the most part. Under a gram, it's obviously a little bit more trying. Price of gold obviously is helping the situation. Inflation seems to be cooling down a bit, so I think those are really good grades. The project, Gold Shore's project, also hosts in a bit different part of the belt, or property has the Coldstream area. So they've got a former producer in the North Coldstream mine. It was mainly a copper mine, but also produced a significant amount of gold and silver, shutting down in the 60s. And then they've outlined a small little resource just to the east called the East Coldstream deposit. Goes to show you, this part of the belt is fairly prolific in gold showings and gold mineralization. We think we've got a very good piece of it with the historic production and that historic resource. Gold Shore has been drilling, and I think you'll see a lot more news flow out of them over the next little while. So a quick little history. As mentioned, it was first gold mine in northwestern Ontario. It was discovered in 1871, so fairly early in the European sort of settling and developing of the area. Commercial production in the 1930s. Sort of had intermittent work through the 80s and 90s. The land package, as you see it, was split up in 14 different packages. So previously it was all small pieces all over the place. Pale Lake Gold consolidated the land package in the 90s. Had a bit of a storied history. It didn't quite take advantage of the booming market in the early 2000s. Various operators poorly focused. I think they were choosing their partners not as well as they could have. To be polite. So the advantage was where they floundered. I saw opportunity. And Kesselrun came in and picked up the project in 2016. We bought it for 4 million shares outright at a good point in the market. We were doing reasonably well. They were floundering, so we took advantage of the situation. Spent most of that the next few years after the acquisition compiling the data. It was all paper for the most part, so there was a lot of work, sort of getting it exploration ready, essentially. We took a very cautious approach getting in there and really testing some ideas and some models, making sure that the data was accurate, locations of drill holes, etc. We kicked off drilling in 2020. We drilled about 36,000 meters. Since then, we've had some very good success. We've expanded the new zones. We've discovered lots of new zones as well. And our current and future exploration, we're just doing more of the same. We're trying to advance all the known zones. We're trying to find some new zones and get other areas drill ready, which I'll talk about a little bit more. So here's the property again, just to show there's basically two prospective gold trends: the Huronian gold trend, which is the host of that historic Huronian mine and that historic resource, and then the Moss gold trend, and then that Moss gold trend trends onto our property. To note the recent work by Goldshore, they just had a news release a couple weeks ago. They've traced the zone right to our property boundary. They're calling it the Moss Nose. Nose mostly, I think, is referring to there's a fold axis in this area, and so this is what they're referring to as the Moss Nose. So they've traced that, and so we're working hard bringing this zone through. We've got some good indications through grab samples, but as I mentioned, most of our work has been focused in that Huronian mine area. And there's just a rundown of sort of our historic resource: 44,000 plus ounces in the indicated historic category, 500,000 inferred, and that's the rundown on the Moss resources that they have. Our target area. So outside the Huronian mine area that I've already sort of circled, where our blue sky growth is going to be. We've got 3 further areas. So basically, we've got 4 areas that we're concentrating our efforts on. Huronian mine area, as mentioned, we're working on the known zone growth and new zone discoveries in that area. The Huronian North area, we think we've done some work up there, detailed magnetics. We think there's another flexure here, and we've also been working on looking at this area in here. Just to note, Goldshore Resources have found quite a few zones in the hanging wall and the footwall, so we think there's some good potential up in this area. There's a 30-gram grab sample from some previous work we did, along with this potential flexure. I think the flexures are sort of key. We think these flexures are sort of what is focusing gold mineralization. You can see this big flexure here. We think there's another flexure here. We think there's another flexure here. Obviously, the Huronian area is also a flexure. So that's sort of the key. Flying good detailed magnetics really helps us focus on those and seeing those flexures. Sometimes they're subtle because there's not a lot of iron-rich rock, so it's very subtle in the magnetics. We've been working on what we call the McKellar West project. It's effectively the southwest extension of the Huronian. We've been getting some good results out of that. We think there's a lot of good news to come out of that, and a lot of discovery potential. And as I mentioned, that Moss South area, we've been waiting to see the results from Goldshore's recent exploration to see where they have traced the zone to better focus our exploration and in a more cost-effective way. So lots of work to do. I'll run through some of the zones and these target areas relatively quickly, just to update everybody. So the Huronian mine area is really exemplified by the three shafts from the historic mining, the past production, and then these zones all in very close proximity to that historic production. The Huronian zone is the host of all the production historically was off the Huronian zone. And then the McKellar being the southwest extent of Huronian, and then the Fisher, I call it the Fisher area zones, because what ended up, when we started, it was sort of two discrete zones. We've now realized that there's actually quite a lot of gold mineralization and zones in the hanging wall and the footwall of all these zones, and all in close proximity. So this has been the focus of the bulk of our work, and that 36,000 meters of drilling. So here's the Huronian zone. As I noted, that historic resource was on the Fisher and the McKellar zone. It was not on the Huronian zone. So the reason being, we think, is because the old timers dumped waste rock over top of the zone, as you can see in the photo, and it was buried, so you couldn't actually see the zone. So we dug through it back in 2020. You can see the picture on the left, and sampled it. So the takeaway from that picture is essentially each of those terraces in the rock is essentially a quartz vein. In the sub-meter to the meter plus scale, with visible gold. Taking 15 gram, 30 gram, 100 gram samples out of these quartz veins. And the zone is 10 plus meters wide. I took that picture. I was still standing on the zone, the shear zone, with quartz veins at that point. So the true thickness is 10 plus meters. And the quartz veins, not all of them were mined. And looking at this long section of the Huronian zone, the grayed out areas are mined out stopes. They represent only one vein. So in every instance, the old timers only mined out one vein. So there's a lot of remnant resource left. So when we were drilling the zone, we were really testing that thesis that there's 4 quartz veins in this one area, but they only mined one. We were seeing visible gold in multiple quartz veins, so we're like, why didn't they mine them all? Basically, they were mining the best one, or at least what they thought was the best one. Keeping in mind, exploration techniques back then, they weren't drilling a lot, so it was drift for grade essentially, and so lots of remnant mineralization, a lot of remnant resource potential. You can see some of these hits: 16 grams over 4 meters, 10 over 2, 7 over 3, 13 over 3. There is a lot of gold left in and amongst these mined out areas. So I think we proved the thesis up, and we've got a lot more work to do. Tracing that down plunge, and there's lots of room on strike to the northeast, and as well to the southwest, which I'll touch on in those known zones that we've been working. I always show this picture just to sort of give that, when I say the zones are very proximal, they're very close together. There's a drone shot. The drone is hovering over one of the shafts, this shaft, in fact, over the Huronian zone, and you can see the Fisher North zone and then the Fisher zone out in the distance a little bit, and there's a pickup truck and the drill for scale. Just to give you an idea, you see it on a map, it's one thing, but to see it in real life, it's spitting distance away. So we, as mentioned, we've discovered lots of new zones as we were, stepping back on drilling the Fisher zone. We start finding more zones in the footwall. As we were stepping back on Huronian, we suddenly discover something unexpected, and so we've been piecing these zones together. It can be challenging at times, but we're starting to get a pretty good handle on what is going on, which way the quartz veins are going, and there's different generations of quartz veins. Suffice it to say, there's a lot of gold all in close proximity. This is a long section of Fisher. When we picked up the project, the Fisher zone was known sort of in about that size. So we've expanded it to 700 meters in strike, 200 meters at depth, lots of good hits, and you get these treasure boxes. The big takeaway is you get these little treasure boxes every once in a while. We think we're onto another one here. There's probably multiples of them throughout. But typically, you're looking at, these are fairly typical grades, 6 over 4 meters, 6 over 6 meters, 5 over 5. And then every once in a while, you get these blowouts, whether a blowout in grade and thickness, usually hand in hand, 10 grams over 6 or 6 grams over 45 was quite an extraordinary hit. But a lot of gold. We're having a lot of success. We think we've got another chute starting over to the southwest with that whole 147, 49 grams over a meter. So a lot of success in the Fisher zone. We've been pretty happy with that. Typical visible gold quartz vein, typical alteration style, easy to pick out in the drill core, which is nice. You can see new zones starting up just as a visual indicator. So fairly simple logging. McKellar, the southwest extent of the Huronian. I like this shot. Shows these quartz veins. Gives you a good sort of an idea of what scale we're looking at of the zone. As mentioned, similar to Huronian, it's 10-ish meters wide with multiple quartz veins running through it. We've been working hard expanding the McKellar zone as well. We've got about 1,200 meters of strike length already, and down to 150 meters. We've got lots of strike length to go. The McKellar West target, which I'll touch on in a bit, in a similar situation, similar grades as Fisher, and similar situation where you get these blowouts. So, 5 over 5, 6 over 6 are fairly typical, but you get these treasure boxes, 30 grams over 7 meters, 14 grams over 11 meters. So very nice to see, but yeah, similar plunge, similar grades, similar thickness as Fisher. Alteration slightly different host rock, so it looks a little bit different, but marked by quartz veins and visible gold. So to sum up, we've had a lot of drilling success in the Huronian mine area. We've got 3 zones that we've really been concentrating on: the Fisher zones, the McKellar zone, the Huronian zone. We've expanded the footprint. We've discovered new zones all in close proximity, and had continued success, and will have continued success. And I'll touch on sort of the greener pastures, greenfields exploration, the blue sky potential. Huronian North, we think they're prime for new discoveries. This flexure area we think is going to give us some good drill targets going forward. and we still have quite a bit of strike length off Huronian in this area. Had one little good grab sample there. So a lot of work still to do. And as mentioned, these parallel zones to Moss, we think there's still this area is ripe for some good discoveries and good drill targets. McKellar West, we've been doing a lot of modeling, a lot of hard work as of late. Some news to come out on it, but effectively, the old interpretation was McKellar was trucking along, and there was some grabs out on this area called the Minoletti. That was the previous interpretation. We've flown some detailed magnetics in here, and we followed up with some mapping. So basically, we're looking at two separate zones. We think we've traced this all the way back to Huronian. We've got a bit more work to sort of flesh it out, but I think that's going to open things up quite a bit. Basically doubling our potential strike length with a second zone. A lot more work to do, and then we still have another quite a bit of strike length this way to go, so that we haven't even gotten boots on the ground yet. So a lot more work to do. And then the Moss South area, as mentioned, we've got a lot of work. We've been looking at this area, which we think are these parallel zones, these footwall, hanging wall zones to the Moss deposit. We think the Moss gold trend actually comes down here. We've got a flexure. I think we've got another flexure down here. So we're gonna do some detailed mag, get these drill ready up for the upcoming exploration season. So to sum up, Huronian, 36,000 meters of drilling, lots of drill targets. We've expanded the known mineralized zones. We've identified new targets, and yeah, the next phase of drilling, we're going to concentrate on zone expansion and new discoveries. And this is sort of the ongoing exploration. We've been doing some detailed mag. We've been doing lots of mapping. We're trying to refine our targets in the Huronian mine area. Been lots of modeling and drill target selection in McKellar West, and then in the Moss South area. Our near-term exploration goals are we're going to work hard to demonstrate the full potential of this project to the market. We're going to work expanding the size and continuity of the known zones, discover new zones, really start fleshing out that Moss South area and show that potential down there. And then longer term, it's a little bit out there, but it's 26 plus. We're going to really demonstrate that full potential and start evaluating the economics and advance those new discoveries. And then I'll just sum up with the little overview of the capital markets or cap structure. So we're trading about 5 cents, 94 million shares outstanding, so market cap of shy of 5 million. Still got about $500,000 in the bank. We're sort of holding it tight to our chest. I'm a big shareholder. I jotted it down because I can never remember, 6.1 million shares. So management and insiders altogether own about 10%. Institutions are in the 15% range. High net worth investors, friends and family, long-term supporters are sort of in that 15% range. Trade good volume, I think, overall, considering where we are in the market. And then it's just a little quick summary of us. I'm a professional geologist, 25 years experience, worked with lots of majors way back in the day, earlier in my career. And we've got a great team led by John DaCosta, my CFO, out of Vancouver, Rodney Stevens, who's the VP Corporate Development, and then the board's rounded up by Callan Jeffs, President of Red Metal Resources, and Yana Selena, who is a chartered accountant based out of Vancouver. And I guess I'll sum it up. Why Kesselrun? Multiple high-grade bulk tonnage targets. We've seen limited exploration, effectively shallowly drilled, in the 150 to 200 meter range on known zones. Lots of exploration to go. 100% owned. Highly experienced team. We're well positioned to take advantage of a rising gold market. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mike, for the very informative presentation. We will now start the Q&A portion of the webinar. Reminder to everyone on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we already do have a few questions. So first, it says, what type of exploration, or what exploration tools, I guess you could say, have given you the best results? Geophysics, boots on the ground, trenching, etc.
Yeah, I think I've always been a big fan of overburden stripping. So I think that's a key thing. We've done quite a bit of that, and that's been very revealing for cost-effective testing of an idea, of a model. So we've done quite a bit of that. What I've found recently is flying this UAV or drone magnetics. So you fly very low at treetop level, essentially. So as long as you have good LiDAR data, then you can basically get as low as possible. So you're flying sometimes uncomfortably low, watching the magnetometer fly over just barely above treetop level can be disconcerting. But so flying, we call it low and slow, really gives very good detailed magnetics, detailed in this, what would normally have to be done on boots on the ground magnetics, where you're crashing through with a magnetometer, which is very expensive. It's very, people heavy. So I would say the long and short, the geophysics, the magnetics has given us the best results, followed up with overburden trenching.
Great. And which of the zones do you think has the best potential for expansion? Or I guess where would you put a drill and focus if you went today?
Which of my kids is my favorite? Is sort of the similar question. I'm partial to McKellar. I think that McKellar West area with that middle eddy is really. I think there's a lot of gold down there. We've seen a lot of gold in grab samples. That's sort of where I'm leaning towards. But I mean, the Huronian area is a tough one, right? That where there's past production, you're always going to go there, right? The simple answer is often the best answer. There's a lot of gold around there. There's a lot of quartz veins. That's where the old timers focus their efforts. So I think that'll give us good bang in the buck. That's the bonus of the project is it's target rich. Not only greenfield targets, but we've got a lot of advanced targets. So it's the big challenge for us is choosing which ones and where to spend the money when you've got so many choices. That's the biggest difficulty in my book. So, but yeah, I would say McKellar West, I think, is going to be the surprise, or not a surprise, but I think that's going to give us a lot of good news going forward.
Great. And obviously you're at an exploration stage, but community relations and so on are always important. What are relationships like with local communities and the First Nations in the area?
Good. Yeah. No, the local communities very supportive. The First Nation, Lac du Molac and Lac La Croix, very supportive. So yeah, I think it's a mining friendly jurisdiction. I think it's a great place to work. Thunder Bay is very pro mining, as most of the local communities are as well.
Great.
Yeah, and I mean, it's great having Goldshore Resources right next door, advancing their project. It's always nice to have a big, more advanced development project right next door, especially when you've got the strike extent of some of their best geology. And yeah, it's they've been very helpful. Not in disclosing information, but very, loose talking and sort of talking about exploration strategy, where are they seeing most success. It's not a secret squirrel. I think the environment in Thunder Bay and in the general Northwestern Ontario, I would say, is everybody's very cooperative, wants to see everybody succeed, because success begets success, right? So,
right, absolutely. One question here, always popular. Mm-hmm. How much cash do you have, and how far will that last?
So we've got about $500,000. It won't last long if we start drilling. As everybody knows, if you're drilling at all in, say, $250 a meter all in with assays and everything included. So $500,000 would get us started. So the bonus of I run a consulting company in town. The consulting company has been very supportive. In tough times, we're doing a lot for free, essentially. So, we punched above our cash position, essentially, because of that. So I'm very thankful to all my partners and the support that they've been giving in that sense. And yeah, it's a win-win situation. So, but yeah, we've got enough to get the ball rolling, get started. Obviously, the Ontario government has had some junior exploration grants, so that's been very supportive as well. We've tapped that, advancing our Bluff Point project the last couple of years, as well as Huronian last year. We did they were supported some of this detailed magnetics that we've done, and some of the overburden stripping.
Great. And I guess one other question here, kind of generally, we've seen some ups and downs in the market.
Mm-hmm.
But one question, and therefore how much activity there is, but how have you found the ability to get the people, equipment that you need? And we did have a question about assay result turnaround times.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that question obviously is popping up because back in the height of COVID, and we had a bit of a boom in the exploration sector. The price of gold popped up, and a lot of interest in it. I think with the money flooding into the system, sort of was part of the cause of that. So it was difficult. Turnaround times were very difficult during COVID, very long, because the labs were inundated and also had a tough time finding people. It doesn't surprise anybody if the government's handing out money to sit on your couch and watch YouTube videos or Netflix. The people that are the boots on the ground people are tough to find. We had a really tough time, as did the labs back in 2021, 22. It's gotten a bit easier. Turnaround times now are reasonable. We were looking at gold assays 3 to 4 weeks. But it won't take much to put a constraint on that. I think I was talking to some of the lab guys, and Kinross doing all that drilling at Great Bear. There's been a lot of samples going through the system because of that. So when you're doing definition drilling, I don't know, it must have had 12 or 15 rigs running. So that does is going to be impactful, but it's gotten better. But it'll tighten up once the market starts getting hot again.
Great, absolutely, yeah, and absolutely, and hopefully it does here with that.
Yes. Well, there's pros and cons, right? So
yeah.
I'll take it. We always figure it out. So
yep. Yes. Well, I guess. One final question here, but just to review, what are some key catalysts or news items we might expect to hear from Kesselrun in the coming weeks?
Well, I think it's going to be really fleshing out these greenfield these target areas. I think McKellar West, we'll have some news coming out on that. We've had boots on the ground, and we're still going to have boots on the ground coming up. We've got some plans to get back out there. So yeah, showing that full potential, getting those drill targets ready, and when the time is right, we're going to recommence drilling and get back out there. And so I think there'll be, with this rising gold market and renewed interest in the junior sector, I think it's going to be a news-filled, end of 24 and 2025.
Great, absolutely, Mike. Well, I'd like to thank Mike Thompson for presenting today, and thank you everyone on the line for tuning in. Red Cloud Securities will be back Wednesday afternoon when our webinar series continues with Cantera Minerals presenting Wednesday, September 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great rest of your day and happy investing.